Okay, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, the final chapters. I hope most of you know what's going on. But just in case, I guess I have to do a summary. I'll do a brief summary now. The first thing you need to know about Brave New World by Aldous Huxley is it's set in a futuristic society. I can't remember what year, but it is, what was it, 600, That's not important to the plot. Okay. Straight out of the horse's mouth. It's AF 632. Thank you. The best review is to start over. You know what? I just might. Chapter 1. Okay, it's set in the year AF 632. I used to think it was 160 something, but it's actually 6 something, 632. This book was written in 1932, and it's set in the year 632 AF. Coincidence? I think not. AF stands for After Ford. It's set in a society that worships Ford Motors. Henry Ford, what a guy. Everything is made on an assembly line. From trucks to babies. Ford. It's almost over. Oh yeah, from everything from truck copters to babies. So it's 2527-ish. It is the year 2527, also known as AF 632. After our dear Ford. Henry Ford, Sam Walton, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, these are your leaders now. Henry Ford was a good president. Dude, you're freaking me out. That was Gerald Ford, right? I thought I already got this. I thought I already got this straight. The very first time I gave a summary of Brave New World, I almost said Gerald Ford. But I was like, no, that's not right. I'm glad I didn't say that. I said Ford Motors. Okay, 632 AF. We live in a society. There's a few characters you have to know about. There's Bernard and Lenina. That's Bernard Marx and Lenina. They work together in the baby factory, making babies all day long. And Bernard has a crush on Lenina Crown. Yes, you're right. I was pretending not to know her name. Lenina and Bernard, they go on a date. In this society, going on a date is basically like as normal as going out for lunch. I mean, fucking each other is as normal as going out for lunch. So Lenina and Bernard, they actually do like each other. They're not just going out for lunch. They do like each other, but it's complicated. So those are two characters. They work at the baby factory. I just spilled beer on myself. That was in the book too. God, this is so hard to do. Characters. Bernard, Lenina. Helmholtz Watson. He's Bernard's friend. He's also really he's super hot. He's way hotter than Bernard. Bernard's like not even hot by his own standards. So there's Bernard, and then there's his hot friend Helmholtz Watson, who's like a Giga Chad. But they're friends, like, you know, like they bond because they're both different from society. Not because he's a Giga Chad. They're supposed to be Giga Chads. Oh yeah, this isn't a caste society where like there's like alphas at the top and the betas at the bottom. No, I'm kidding. Betas like second. At the bottom are like the epsilons and the gammas. Which is strictly enforced, but everybody's happy with it because they're brainwashed by, like, society. They're also given alcohol in their blood surrogate when they're embryos. And then after they're born, they're conditioned even further with, like, psychological shit, like they, like, whisper in your ear while you're sleeping, and you, like, memorize everything that they tell you. And Bernard is an alpha plus, actually. But everybody thinks that he accidentally got some alcohol in his blood surrogate before he was born, because he's, like, really weird, and he's, like, short, and he doesn't look or act like an alpha plus. He's just, like, a total oddball. He goes against the grain, you know, like he sees above society and he thinks that society is fucked. And that's kind of why Lenina likes him. And that's also why Helmholtz Watson likes him. Helmholtz is every inch an alpha plus, but he likes Bernard because Bernard's real and he can talk to Bernard about like real shit. Everybody else is stupid. So, anyways, Bernard and Lenina go on a date to a savage reservation, and they meet the savages who live on the reservation in the Savage Reservation, which is an area of land enclosed by an electric fence where, like, humans just get on. They, like, worship Eagle Jesus. And anyways, they meet this one savage. His name's John Savage. And it turns out that his father is Randy Savage. No, his father is not a savage. And neither is his mother. Gasp. A long time ago, two people had sex. And a baby was born. And his name was John Savage. And the Savage's father is a very important man. His name was Thomas. Tomakin. It was Tomakin. His name was Tomakin. And Tomakin went on a date with Linda, much like Lenina went on a date with Bernard. It's all connected. But all those years ago, Linda fell off of a cliff, and Tomakin just went home because he couldn't find Linda. And Linda ended up living in a savage reservation for 20 years after being born in, like, the futuristic otherworld. She just got a broken leg and landed in the middle of like a tribe of savages. I'm so sorry. Please, content warning. This is extremely racist. I don't know what to say. The savages raised Linda and her child as if they were their own, but they kind of thought Linda was a huge slut and really weird. And then Linda died. It was all John's fault. But that was back in the other world with like futuristic helicopters and stuff. And Linda died from doing too much drugs. And John felt like he killed her on accident because he kind of got mad at her and like shook her like a little. He just shook her a little. You know, he was like, Mom, why are you like this? And then she died. So John feels very responsible. Who's to say? He feels bad, though. And then everybody else in society, like, was like, dude, what's wrong with you? It's just your mom. I mean, nobody even has a mom. They're like, it's just your disgusting mother. Why are you sad? And then John went on a political rant. And he was like, you guys are a bunch of babies. I'm actually not paraphrasing. That's a direct quote. He's like, are you happy being babies and slaves? So he called him a bunch of babies. And then he got arrested. And Bernard and Helmholtz Watson and Bernard Marx, they were like, that's our friend, because they're friends with the Savage. Oh God, I forgot to tell you about the Savage's father, Randy. No, wait, I did. Tomakin. Tomakin is also the like, he's like a really important guy, so it was really shocking when everyone found out that he had a son, you know, and everybody laughed at him and he lost his job. And that's how John met his father, because of Bernard. And then Bernard introduced him to Helmholtz and John are like, they like read poetry to each other and they're like, wow, you're such a cool guy. Anyways, and then Bernard and Helmholtz, they were like, that's our friend. We've got to help him. And then they got arrested too. So now John, Helmholtz, and Bernard have been arrested because they're all poetry bros. Although Bernard's a little bit of a bitch. He was like, he acted like he didn't know them. That was funny. Bernard's a real funny guy. He was like, I don't even know these people. These are not my drugs. I mean, those are my drugs. I was not trying to throw them away. I don't know what these guys are doing, but I just met them. But you know, they arrested him anyways. And then they got brought to the World Controller. His name, that's the last character I think we have to know today. The World Controller, Mustafa Mond. And so in the last chapters that we read, they got arrested. And then they met Mustafa Mond, the World Controller, and they've been talking to him about why they got arrested. They're like, please don't kill us. And he was like, oh, I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to do something much worse. And anyway, so they talked to Mustafa Mond, and he's like, guys, look, I'm really smart. And I think you're really smart too. And being smart is not good. So we're gonna have to kill you. Just kidding. They're not gonna die. Anyways, but that we're in the middle of the interrogation right now. That's where we are. Chapter 17. They've been arrested. Bernard had a mental breakdown and went to bed. Also, Bernard's kind of he's kind of like a narc. He's kind of a little bitch. Bernard immediately cracked. He was like, these guys made me do it. I don't even know them. Like, and then when Mustafa Mond was like, damn, dude, calm down. You're being a little snitch. He was like, I feel tired. I'm going to go to bed. And he took a bunch of drugs and went to bed. I don't know what's going to happen to him. Snitches get stitches, though. Oh, and we're in the middle of an argument here. The Savage is arguing with the World Controller. And you know what? I messed up one part of the summary. I'm sorry. This is dragging on. I've already lost like 60 viewers. Helmholtz Watson, he's a really cool character, actually. He does not work in the baby bottling plant. He does not work in the baby bottle pop plant. He is a emotional engineer. He works in like the Department of Emotional Engineering and Propaganda. So he writes music and like he I don't know, he writes music basically. He writes like music and television shows, and that's his job. That's kind of why Helmholtz is really cool and why him and John get along, because they're both writers. So only one guy controlling all the world. I think it's like it's kind of, I don't know if it's just one guy, but it is implied that it is just one person for the whole world, but that person is like chosen by a bunch of other people, you know, like all the other like leaders choose the big leader. And that's why he's the world controller. Because they think that he's, like, the most, like, capable of doing everything. Anyways, that was the worst summary I've ever given. Let's get started. Why am I depressed now? Oh, my sweet summer child. It's only going to get worse. Chapter 17. Am I speaking too loud? Like, should I turn the volume down or speak quieter? Or don't tell me to whisper. No, it's good. Louder? Like, really, though? I feel like I'm blowing out your eardrums. My voice is echoing around the room. Okay. Right, you can turn it down yourself. If Freckles had a voice, it'd be yours. Wow, that's delightful. Thank you. Okay, chapter 17. In the voice of the Savage. Art, science. You seem to have paid a fairly high price for your happiness, said the Savage, when they were alone. Well, religion, of course, replied the controller. Oh, fuck, I missed a line. God damn it. Art, science, you seem to have paid a fairly high price for your happiness, said the Savage savagely when they were alone. He didn't say it savagely, he just said it. Art, science, you seem to have paid a fairly high price for your happiness, said the Savage, when they were alone. Anything else? Well, religion, of course, replied the controller. There used to be something called God before the 9 Years' War. But I was forgetting. You do know all about God, I suppose. Well, the savage hesitated. He would have liked to say something about solitude, about night, about the mesa lying pale under the moon, about the precipice, the plunge into the shadowy darkness, about death. He would have liked to speak, but there were no words. Not even in Shakespeare. The controller, meanwhile, had crossed to the other side of the room and was unlocking a large safe set into the wall between the bookshelves. Oh, one more part of my summary. I thought Helmholtz was still in this scene. But I think Helmholtz and Bernard, they're getting sent to, like, an island to live with other dissenters. And then Helmholtz went to check on Bernard because Bernard's, like, sleeping in a drug coma. So now it's just the savage and the world controller. Okay. The controller, meanwhile, had crossed to the other side of the room and was unlocking a large safe set into the wall between the bookshelves. Somatos. The heavy safe door swung open, rummaging in the darkness within. "It is a subject," he said, "that has always had a great interest to me." He pulled out a thick black volume. "You've never read this, for example?" The savage took it. The Holy Bible, containing the Old and New Testaments, he read aloud from the title page. "Nor this." It was a small book and had lost its cover. "The Imitation of Christ." "Nor this." He handed out another volume. "The Varieties of Religious Experience" by William James. "And I've got plenty more," Mustafa Mond continued, resuming his seat. "A whole collection of pornographic old books. God in the safe and Ford on the shelves." He pointed with a laugh at his avowed library. To the shelves of books, the rack full of reading machine bobbins and soundtrack rolls. "But if you know about God, why don't you tell them?" asked the savage indignantly. "Why don't you give them these books on God?" "For the same reason we don't give them Othello. They're old. They're about gods hundreds of years ago. Or they're about God 100 years ago. He's not about..." All right, everybody drink. I do like that drinking game. I don't think I mess up enough to kill anybody. All right. Every time I mess up, take a sip. "For the same reason we don't give them Othello. They're old. They're about God hundreds of years ago. Not about God now. But God doesn't change. Men do. What difference does that make?" "All the difference in the world," said Mustafa Mond. He got up again and walked to the safe. "There was a man called Cardinal Newman," he said. "A cardinal," he exclaimed parenthetically, "was a kind of ARC community songwriter. Songster. Fuck. All right, you guys might actually die from this. He was a kind of ARC community songster. I, Pandulph of fair Milan, Cardinal. I read about them in Shakespeare. Of course you have. Well, as I was saying, there was a man called Cardinal Newman. Ah, here's the book. He pulled it out. And while I'm about it, I'll take this one too. It's by a man called Maine de Biran. He was a philosopher, if you know what that was. A man who dreams of fewer things than there are in heaven and earth, the savage said promptly. A man who dreams of fewer things than there are in heaven and earth. Quite so. I'll read you one of the things he did dream of in a moment. Meanwhile, listen to what this old Ark Community songster said. He opened the book at a place marked by a slip of paper and began to read. We are not our own any more than what we possess is our own. We did not make ourselves. We cannot be supreme over ourselves. We are not our own masters. We are God's property. It is not our happiness thus to view the matter. Is it not our happiness thus to view the matter? Is it any happiness or any comfort to consider that we are our own? It may be thought so by the young and the prosperous. These may think it a great thing to have everything, as they suppose, their own way, to depend on no one, to think of nothing out of sight, to be without the irksomeness of continual acknowledgement, continual prayer, continual reference of what they do to the will of another. But as time goes on, they, as all men, will find that independence was not made for man, that it is an unnatural state, will do for a while, but will not carry us on safely to the end. Mustafa Mond paused, put down the first book and picked up another, turned over the pages. Take this, for example, he said, and in his deep voice once more began to read. A man grows old. He feels in himself that radical sense of weakness, of listlessness, of discomfort, which accompanies the advance of age, and feeling thus, imagines himself merely sick, lulling his fears with the notion that this distressing condition is due to some particular cause, from which, as an illness, he hopes to recover. Vain imaginings that sickness is old age, and a horrible disease it is. They say that it is fear of death and of what comes after death that makes men turn to religion as they advance in years. But my own experience has given me the conviction that, quite apart from any such terrors or imaginings, the religious sentiment tends to develop as we grow older, to develop because, as the passions grow calm, as the fancy and sensibilities are less excited and less excitable, our reason becomes less troubled in its working, less obscured by the images, desires, and distractions in which it used to be absorbed, whereupon God emerges as from behind a cloud. Our soul feels, sees, turns towards the source of all light, turns naturally and inevitably. For now that all that gave the world of sensations its life and charms has begun to leak away from us, now that the phenomenal existence is no more, bolstered up by impressions from within or without, we feel the need to lean on something that abides, something that will never play us false, a reality, an absolute and everlasting truth. Yes, we inevitably turn to God, for this religious sentiment is of its nature so pure, so delightful to the soul that experiences it, that it makes up to us for all our other losses. Mustafa Mond shut the book and leaned back in his chair. One of the numerous things in heaven and earth that these philosophers didn't dream about was this. He waved his hand. Us, the modern world. You can only be independent of God while you've got youth and prosperity. Independence won't take you safely to the end. Well, now we've got youth and prosperity right up to the end. What follows? Evidently that we can be independent of God. The religious sentiment will compensate us for all our losses. But there aren't any losses for us to compensate. Religious sentiment is superfluous. I don't actually know how to say this. What the fuck? Superfluous. That sounds wrong. Superfluous.
Superfluous.
All right, that sounds better. Superfluous. Actually, it still sounds ridiculous when I say it. But there aren't any losses for us to compensate. Religious sentiment is superfluous. And why should we go hunting for a substitute for youthful desires when youthful desires never fail? A substitute for distractions when we go on enjoying the old fooleries till the very last. What need we of repose when our minds and bodies continue to delight in activity? Of consolation when we have soma, of something immovable when there is the social order. Then you think there is no God? No, I think there quite probably is one. How did you have a bot to say that? It's called Google. Google can pronounce any word for you if you want. Superfluous. Religion is superfluous. Then you think that there's no God? No, I think there quite probably is one. Then why? Why? Mustafa Mond checked him. But he manifests himself in different ways to different men. In pre-modern times, he manifested himself as the being that's described in those books. Now, how does he manifest himself now? Asked the savage. Well, he manifests himself as an absence, as though he wasn't there at all. That's your fault. Call it the fault of civilization. God isn't compatible with machinery and scientific medicine and universal happiness. You must make your choice. Our civilization has chosen machinery and medicine and happiness. That's why I have to keep these books locked up in a safe. They're smut. People would be shocked if the savage interrupted him. But isn't it natural to feel that there is a God? You might as well ask if it's natural to do up one's trousers with zippers, said the controller sarcastically. You remind me of another of those old fellows called Bradley. He defined philosophy as the finding of bad reason for what one believes by instinct. As if one believed anything by instinct. One believes things because one has been conditioned to believe them. Finding bad reasons for what one believes for other bad reasons, that's philosophy. People believe in God because they've been conditioned to believe in God. But all the same, said the savage, insisted the savage. But all the same, insisted the savage, it's natural to believe in God when you're alone. Quite alone in the night, thinking about death. But people are never alone now, said Mustafa Mond. We make them hate solitude, and we arrange their lives so that it's impossible for them to ever have it. The savage nodded gloomily. At Malpai, he had suffered because they had shut him out from the communal service and activities of the Pueblo. And in civilized London, he was suffering because he could never escape from those communal activities. He could never be quietly alone. Do you remember that bit in King Lear? Said the savage at last. The gods are just, and of our pleasant vices make instruments to plague us. The dark and vicious place where thee he got cost him his eyes. And Edmund answers, you remember? He's wounded, he's dying. Thou hast spoken right, 'tis true. The wheel has come full circle. I am here. What about that now? Doesn't there seem to be a God managing things, punishing, rewarding? Well, does there? Questioned the controller in his turn. You can indulge in any number of pleasant vices with a free martin and run no risk of having your eyes put out by your son's mistress. The wheel has come full circle. I am here. But where would Edmund be nowadays? Sitting in a pneumatic chair with his arm round a girl's waist, sucking away at his sex hormone chewing gum and looking at the feelies. The gods are just, no doubt, but their code of law is dictated in the last resort by the people who organize society. Providence takes its cue from men. Are you sure? Asked the savage. Are you quite sure that the Edmund in that pneumatic chair hasn't been just as heavily punished as the Edmund who's wounded and bleeding to death? The gods are just. Haven't they used his pleasant vices as an instrument to degrade him? Degrade him from what position? As a happy, hard-working, goods-consuming citizen? He's perfect. Of course, if you choose some other standard than ours, then perhaps you might say he was degraded. But you've got to stick to one set of postulates. You can't play electromagnetic golf according to the rules of centrifugal bumblepuppy. Ahem. But value dwells not in particular will, said the savage. It holds his estimate and dignity, as well wherein 'tis precious of itself as it is in the prizer. In the prizer. Come, protested Mustapha-Mond. That's going rather far, isn't it? Value dwells not in particular will, said the savage. It holds his estimate and dignity as well wherein 'tis precious, as well, I don't even understand what John's saying. It holds his estimate and dignity. Value dwells not in particular will, but value dwells not in particular will. It holds his estimate and dignity as well wherein 'tis precious of itself, as in the prizer. Come, protested Mustapha-Mond. That's going rather far, isn't it? If you allowed yourselves to think of God, you wouldn't allow yourselves to be degraded by pleasant vices. You would have a reason for bearing things patiently, for doing things with courage. I've seen it with the Indians. I'm sure you have, said Mustapha-Mond. But then we aren't Indians. There isn't any need for a civilized man to bear anything that's seriously unpleasant. And as for doing things, Ford forbid that he should get the idea into his head. It would upset the whole social order if men started doing things on their own. What about self-denial? If you had a god, you'd have a reason for self-denial. But industrial civilization is only possible when there's no self-denial. Self-indulgence up to the very limits imposed by hygiene and economics. Otherwise, the wheels stop turning. You'd have a reason for chastity, said the savage, blushing a little as he spoke the words. But chastity means passion. Chastity means neurasthenia. And passion and neurasthenia mean instability. And instability means the end of civilization. You can't have a lasting civilization without plenty of pleasant vices. But God's the reason for everything noble and fine and heroic. If you had a God, my dear young friend, said Mustafa Mond, civilization has absolutely no need of nobility or heroism. These things are symptoms of political inefficiency. In a properly organized society like ours, nobody has any opportunities to be noble or heroic. Conditions have got to be thoroughly unstable before those conditions can arise. Conditions have got to be thoroughly unstable before that occasion can arise. Where there are wars, where there are divided allegiances, when there are temptations to be resisted, objects of love to be fought for or defended. There, obviously, nobility and heroism have some sense, but there aren't any wars nowadays. The greatest care is taken to prevent you from loving anyone too much. There's no such thing as divided allegiance. You're so conditioned that you can't help doing what you ought to do. And what you ought to do is, on the whole, so pleasant. So many of the natural impulses are allowed free play that there really aren't any temptations to resist. And if ever, by some unlucky chance, anything unpleasant should somehow happen, why, there's always Soma to give you a holiday from the facts. And there's always Soma to calm your anger, to reconcile you to your enemies, to make you patient and long-suffering. In the past, you could only accomplish these things by making a great effort and after years of hard moral training. Now you swallow 2 or 3 half-gram tablets, and there you are. Anybody can be virtuous now. You can carry at least half of your mortality about in a bottle. Christianity without tears. That's what Soma is. But the tears are necessary. Don't you remember what Othello said? If after every tempest came such calms, may the winds blow till they have wakened death. There's a story one of the old Indians used to tell about a girl of Mataski. The young men who wanted to marry her had to do the morning's hoeing in her garden. It seemed easy, but there were flies and mosquitoes, magic ones. Most of the young men simply couldn't stand the biting and stinging. But the one that could, he got the girl. Charming. But in civilized countries, said the controller, you can have girls without hoeing for them. And there aren't any flies or mosquitoes to sting you. We got rid of them all centuries ago. The savage nodded, frowning. You got rid of them. Yes, that's like you. That's just like you. Getting rid of everything unpleasant instead of learning to put up with it. Whether 'tis better in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them, but you don't do either. You neither suffer nor oppose. You just abolish the slings and arrows. It's too easy. He was suddenly silent, thinking of his mother. In her room on the 37th floor, Linda had floated into a sea of singing lights and perfumed caresses, floated away out of space, out of time, out of the prison of her memories, her habits, her aged and bloated body. And Tomakin, ex-director of hatcheries and conditioning, Tomakin was still on holiday. On holiday from pain and humiliation. In a world where he could not hear those words, that derisive laughter, could not see that hideous face, feel the moist and flabby arms around his neck. In a beautiful world. What you need, the savage went on, what you need is something with tears for a change. Nothing costs enough here. $12.5 million. Henry Foster had protested when the savage told him that. $12.5 million. That's what the new conditioning center costs. Not a cent less. Exposing what is mortal and unsure to all that fortune, death, and danger dare, even for an eggshell. Isn't there something in that? He asked, looking up at Mustafamond. Quite apart from God, though of course God could be a reason for it. Isn't there something in living dangerously? There's a great deal in it, the controller replied. Men and women must have their adrenals stimulated from time to time. What? Questioned the savage, uncomprehending. It's one of the conditions of perfect health. That's why we made the VPS treatments compulsory. VPS? Violent Passion Surrogate. Regularly, once a month. We flood the whole system with adrenaline. It's the complete psychological equivalent of fear and rage. All the tonic effects of murdering Desdemona being, oh God. All right, one more drink, one more sip, I'll allow it. The adrenal. Violent Passion Surrogate, regularly, once a month. We flood the whole system with adrenaline. It's the complete psychological equivalent of fear and rage. All the tonic effects of murdering Desdemona and being murdered by Othello without any of the inconveniences. But I like the inconveniences. We don't, said the controller. We prefer to do things comfortably. But I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin. In fact, said Mustafamond, you're claiming the right to be unhappy. All right, then, said the savage defiantly. I'm claiming the right to be unhappy. Not to mention the right to grow old and ugly and impotent. The right to have syphilis and cancer. The right to live in constant apprehension of what may happen tomorrow. The right to catch typhoid. The right to be tortured by unspeakable pains of every kind. There was a long silence. I claim them all, said the savage at last. Mustafa Mond shrugged his shoulders. You're welcome, he said. Okay, I can't even show you guys the book. I claim them all. You're welcome. Chapter 17 finished. And we come upon the final 18. And I have to pee. I claim the right to feel the need to urinate. That is my battle, not yours. I'll be right back.